The Canada Revenue Agency and the Canada Revenue Agency Corporation, the real CRA and the fake CRA, Audit Amendment, Part 3. Who says that this is an audit? This is not an audit. They are just after your money. Read Canada's white-collar crimes, political, financial, and corporate crimes. You learn about the history of the creation of the CRA Corporation and Service Canada, and of course, the phantom entity, Employment and Social Development Canada. They seem to be the leaders in the creation of the deep state. A deep state is another kind of government that utilizes public resources. You know that once you turn the government into a corporation, just like in the private sector that has different kinds of companies of the same nature, the government spins off and creates another kind of private sector government, but it uses the public sector resources, your tax dollars, and the politicians and agents of influence or the lobbyists are their army to transfer the public resources to their coffers. It's not fair, is it? They take control over the state or the government just at a time when the government has been suffering from severe mental and technical incapacity. Why the government is in a severe state of mental and technical incapacity? Because they reject knowledge. Proverb Hosea warns that if you reject knowledge, the people will be destroyed. Politicians lead the government to be managed without knowledge and knowledge specialization. These leaders mock knowledge, but you will be destroyed. It is worse when the government adopts the philosophy of common sense. You cannot manage the government with a common sense philosophy because it is a field of scientific administration and management, a vast, complex, and difficult organization. It requires the use of the scientific management system, a system that utilizes all kinds of scientific knowledge and knowledge specialization. All kinds of knowledge and knowledge specialization. The sky is the limit. The people are very radical, demanding, and have a bully attitude, especially those of the CRA Corporation, even though they are making a living from you. Their attitude is as if they want to crush you to the ground, but they are making a living from your tax dollars, from every penny you pay in your tax. I remember I asked one of the corrupt officials who left or kicked out from the Department of Human Resources and Social Development in Canada. She's also one of those who used the student's identity and took student loan fraudulently or took departmental loan under the student loan program and used the student's identity to demand repayment. Her name is Tammy McGarry. I asked her, "Who pays your salary?" She said, "The Phoenix." I was surprised. How in the world can a computer program pay her salary? That is how common sense people think it is. She never knows that her income comes from my tax dollars. She is making a living from every penny I pay in taxes, but she turns around, used my identity, and took student loan fraudulently and employment insurance also fraudulently. She makes a living from every Canadian who does not work in the government or on behalf of the government to serve you. She never serves you. She never serves me, but uses my identity and the other 650,000 students' identity and took student loan and employment insurance fraudulently. If you notice, the Internet of e-government has been centralized at Canada.ca. This is not the government, but the deep state. Under this structure, you will see Service Canada's phantom entity, Employment and Social Development Canada, an entity that does not exist. Since Pierre Trudeau, the CRA has been used as an entity that gives you financial difficulty. However, they usually use the administrative procedure that makes it legal. For example, they always send two people to audit you. Having two people to do an audit is the principles of accounting management. When they take your record, it is like borrowing. They make a list of the record they take from you and return the record to you when they finish using it. Or they just make copies of your records. Should you owe taxes, they make you sign an agreement how much you will pay in an installment. If you do your income tax and benefits returns, it does require you to make payment in installment. When Harper created this private entity, the CRA Corporation, no one said anything that it is illegal. The reason is that each politician has his or her own agenda to pursue. Therefore, they never paid attention to this entity. Interestingly, some politicians are lawyers. In fact, Minister Lebouthillier, the Minister of National Revenue, is a lawyer. She never knows that such creation is illegal. But she put camera within the CRA because the people are trying to steal information from the CRA, people from the CRA Corporation. Some other politicians are also lawyers, but never know that creating an entity and naming it with the same name as the existing entity is legal. It is a crime and punishable by law. This was the trend in the early 1980s, prior to the government reform. The new established company always used the name of or the identity of the established company to fraud people, to fraud the clients or the customers of the existing companies. This practice was banned and prohibited, yet after the government becomes a corporation, this illegal practice began to resurface. At the same time, politicians mock knowledge and reject people who are knowledgeable and have knowledge specialty. They even spread their attitude of anti-intellectuals. They get rid of all intellectuals in the government, and Harper finished them all in 2015, prior to losing his power and authority to Justin Trudeau. Trudeau is not a good politician either. He doesn't have, or he never had, what it takes to be a public leader, but people elected him just to get rid of Harper. Public servants who generally are not care much about election went to vote to get rid of Harper. They were angry because Harper kicked out the lots of intellectuals from the federal government. Well, there's still, I think, 3 left. He kept 3. Yes, he kept 3, especially from the Department of Natural Resources, because he had an agenda called Global Market Action Plan, which is one of his key initiatives, and now Carney is following this agenda. The intellectuals in the government had been the backbone of the government. They were the economic planners and the social programs designers that have made Canada to become the envy of the world. Many lawyers spend their office hours raising money for politicians and their political parties, with an expectation that they would be appointed to judicial positions or any leadership position in the government. Therefore, they close their eyes to any corruption inside the government, let alone it is the corruption within the CRA and among the politicians. No one envisioned that Prime Minister Stephen Harper would create an agency with the name CRA Corporation, which is illegal because it carries the same name as the existing Canada Revenue Agency, or the politicians do not know the law itself because they enter the government to pursue their interests, as Harper did, which is to govern without the government. By first taking over the nation's logistics, the Canada Revenue Agency and the Department of Human Resources and Social Development Canada. These two, I mean Canada Revenue Agency Corporation and Service Canada, are intended to take over the federal public service. James Austin said in his The Collaborative Challenge, if you want to take all, chop the head first. If you take over the federal government, you can easily take over the provincial, city, and municipal government, and village governments disappeared altogether. Hasn't this become a reality? Or they enter the government for personal enrichment and to ride on the privilege and wealth of the nation at your expense. The law in the country should be a few, but thoroughly thought. However, the politicians turn everything into a law to advance their ambition and interest. Therefore, you find that all their laws are contradicting each other. They don't stand the storm, and many do not fit or do not have the merit to be called a law. The same goes with public policies. They are simply tort policies or tort laws. This amendment to have more audit power and using a fake court with the customer service agent to act as the judge all in one is the same as enforcing illegality under the gist of the Excise Tax Act and the Underused Housing Tax Act. Why can't the elected officials read the fine print? They don't really know about what is going on under the table. The government works within a paradox of laws. When Chrétien created the Canada Revenue Agency by dismantling the Canada Customs and Douane, there was no law involved. Later on, he created the Canada Revenue Agency Act. The customer service agents and even the lawyers used this act to legitimize their fraud. The Canada Revenue Agency Act is actually organizational structure of the Canada Revenue Agency, and it has nothing to do with auditing done by the CRA. Many believe this, and it is why the CRA corporations becomes bolder in their fraudulent deed. To govern without the government was Harper's expression at the House of Commons after being elected as Canada's Prime Minister. No one questioned Harper about his expression. He was telling them that he's building his own kingdom with your tax dollars at your expense using the political stage. Therefore, when the Parti Québécois proposed Quebec to be a nation, Harper quickly approved that Quebec is a nation within the nation of Canada. Harper did not care whatever happens to Quebec because he is building his own kingdom at your expense. Having Quebec as a nation within Canada does not affect his kingdom. He was planning to establish his kingdom with your tax dollars and the political power you granted him and the political stage you entrusted him to hold. Politicians should be afraid of the police and especially the people because these are the people who elected them. On the contrary, the police and the people fear them because of your fear. They use the power you gave to exploit you and abuse you. Worse still, you glorify them. And because you are afraid of them, they become arrogant. They become narcissistic. They become autocratic and control freak. They want to control you and become obsessive with submission and obedience. They want you to be fully obedient and totally submissive. They use money to reward those who obey and punish those who disobey and non-submissive. What transpired from the work of the CRA Corporation audit. You do not want to pay for the entire amount of cash you have in your bank account in a lump sum payment because you need money to live. They also ask 6 or 8 other people to pay for the amount stated in your statement as or the same as in this internal memo. And the bank managers, they send an internal memo to the bank managers and tell them to clean up your bank account. Then they will take all your tax refunds and federal and provincial benefits without your knowledge and send them all to offshore accounts using your HST account number as the holding account. This is theft. Yes, this is theft. The 6 other people or 8 other people who receive the fraudulent requirement to pay give the money required by this or don't want to give the money required by these unethical CRA auditors. The same amount they ask you, which is your total cash in the bank plus the 13% HST. And if they pay, you will end up with multiple debts. You have a debt in the amount of 6 or 8 times the amount of the cash you have in your bank account to the different people. So you should know that if they ask you to make a lump sum payment, it is not the CRA. It is the agent with an alias who is defrauding you. If they send the myriads of fraudulent requirements to pay to the 6 or 8 different other people who have business tied to you and requesting the same amount of money and it is in a lump sum payment, it is a fraud. It is not about an audit, but about defrauding you or robbing you. And they defraud the other 6 or 8 other people too, but they put the debt, they put the burdens of financial difficulty on you. So my husband was being fraud by this fake agency as well. I'm being fraud and our son is also being fraud by the people from this agency and those from Service Canada who call themselves Employment and Social Development Canada, an entity that does not exist. Yes, my son and I have been victims of fraud and radically forced to be responsible for the debt of the former corrupt government officials and their staff who were in charge of the student loan. This has been their practices since the creation of the CRA Corporation. When they just started in 2007, many small business operators found their bank accounts were frozen. Their bank accounts were never frozen, but the bank managers have transferred their entire cash to the account stated in this internal memo. Either their GST or HST account, online accounts, or the social insurance number online accounts. Then, of course, the next memo would tell them which account the bank managers should transfer the money to, which are the offshore accounts. So if the money hasn't disappeared yet, if the bank managers didn't block you to access your account, you will see that the money is sitting there, sitting in this HST account. It is a fraud and money laundering at the same time under the guise of an audit. The people involved are customer service, even the judge, the court clerk, the minister, the customer service agents are all the same person, the customer service agent. This one, his name is Ari Farah, while his real name is Michael Scolfer. So they never use real names. So that is that because it is a fraud. They never use. They know what they're doing is fraud. They never use real name. Being politically created as a corporation with the name of the CRA, the people become abusive and leaning more and more toward totalitarian and very radical. These are the characteristics of the CRA Corporation. They enforce their illegal deed on you because they know you're stupid. You don't know anything about the CRA and let alone knowing about how the CRA does its audit. For example, Rivera mentioned to lawyers or the victims about the Canada Revenue Agency Act when he sent the fraudulent requirement to pay. By the way, for your information, a requirement to pay can only be issued by the Minister of National Revenue after you, the victim, have ignored to meet the decision of the judge at the court. So it takes about 60 to 90 days. The requirement to pay must be signed by the Minister of National Revenue directly as a reinforcement to the judge decision. In the practice of the CRA Corporation or the CRA, the judge and the minister are all the same person, the customer service agent. As in the stated internal memo, the judge and minister are Rivera. In practice, never once the CRA Corporation uses the name corporation, but only the CRA. They also hide the CRA, its officials, its personnel, and its office or address from you beginning 2013, the year when the government or take over the student loan program, and the year when the 650,000 student loan borrowers' data went missing from the Department of Human Resources and Social Development, Canada. The data didn't go missing. It was taken by the corrupt people rejected by the department who later used the CRA Corporation people to chase after the students whose identities were used by the bank officials and those who work at the student loan division or student loan section at the federal and provincial governments to take student loan fraudulently using forgery and fraudulent documents. It is a crime but they force these students to be responsible for their crime using the system, their position, and authority. In the early 1980s, the practice of having two companies with the same name was common in the business world. You have two different companies with the same name. The newly established company used the identity of the established company to fraud the company's clients or customers. This crime spread widely from the company's clients to citizens. It seemed uncontrollable until the government stopped or stepped in with Consumer Protection Act and the law that punishes any company that uses the name of the existing company to fraud is a crime. The duplicate ones then disappeared after the introduction of these acts. Later, after the government reform, which was also during the same era, phantom companies began to spread even among government entities. They started with crown corporations and now government agencies as the agents of influence steering the government toward corporate Canada. A government becomes a private corporation. It is no longer a public entity of the people, by the people, and for the people, but it becomes a corporation owned by the corporate cronies of the politicians at your expense. Isn't this a robbery? It is a coup d'etat when they take over the public service. But we have politicians who know nothing about the government, and some of them are agents used to rob you of your rights or having a public institution to serve all. An institution established by you, managed by you, and to serve all of you. In terms of management, this corporation or corporate government is run by politicians and their political staff. But in other or under the control of the cronies or the elites who have placed their people inside the government as political appointees to control the government by first controlling the politicians. The politicians cannot bite the hands that feed them, but the money actually comes from you. It is a vicious cycle. To achieve the establishment of corporate Canada, beginning 2013, public servants have been kept away from serving you. They are restricted from serving you. You all are sent to the customer service or the client care. By doing this, you have been removed as citizens of the sovereign country of Canada. Under corporate Canada, you are treated as customers. This is very wrong and unacceptable. It should be corrected. If you look at the structure of departments and agencies, all you see is the politicians and their political staff under the Canada.ca. But there's not, Canada is a bilingual, so it has to be bilingual. But everything now is Canada.ca. Everything else is hidden. No more transparent government. There's supposed to be e-government managed by a private consulting firm has turned the e-government to be only the politicians and their staff. Nobody else in the government. The entire government disappeared and public servants are being kept away from you, and so are the departments, agencies, special operating agencies, crown corporations, and all other public sector entities. Prior to the establishment of the corporate government or corporate Canada, the e-government shows the entire structure and personnel in charge in the departments, agencies, crown corporations, and all public entities, because this e-government was designed by public servants. Once the e-government was contracted out to private contractors, gone all the people and structure, but simply the politicians and their political staff. In Ontario government, when you send an email to any of the politicians, your email will go to the third party first, one with the address ontario.ca, and they will be the one replying to you. The real government has an address gov.on.ca, which is to mimic that of the United States government, a movement to unite Canadian and the U.S. governments. It was a movement pioneered by the Christian government and based on the book of John Manley, The North American Community. Under the corporate government structure, all disappeared. Even the customer service or the client care do not exist. But when you write to the leader of the departments or agencies or any leaders in the government office, they send you to the customer service. You do not know where the customer service agents are formed. Worse still, the CRA customer service agents are people without names, or if they give you names, it is never a real names. They welcome you on the centralized telephone system declaring they are agent 0007. If you ask them to give you their name, they become angry. Of course, with this centralized telephone system, you have to wait for almost 1 hour before an agent 0007 comes on the telephone. They never reply to you using the landline or office line, but always the cellular telephone or a BlackBerry, and this number changes all the time. They are running away from you. Even the so-called auditors, once they have the bank managers clean up your bank account, they all disappeared. Their telephone also disappeared. These agents and all people who work in this corporation and on behalf of the corporation are making a living from you, but they treat you as foreigners. Yet, and then they treat the foreigners as more worthy than you. Remember Justin Trudeau treated the Black Lives Matter or the Antifa better than the citizens who band together to meet with him about the COVID-19 vaccine mandate? He met with these groups but ran away from meeting with the citizen led by Tamara Lynch and Chris Barber. Does it make sense? He even called the citizens fringe minorities, extremists, misogynists. But you are the one who put him in power. Any written communications from the government is signed by people who claim on behalf of such and such leader, or even the signature is a copy and paste, and the letters are all without proper department or agency's letterhead. It is made by the customer service based on their own practice, and they are everything. These leaders never read your communication. Public servants never read your communication either. They were trained and must take an oath to serve you. I mean the public servants, but they have been restricted from serving you. Not only this corporation is deceiving you with the administration and organizational structure where no one knows any person anymore but anybody, the client care or customer service agents of the CRA are even worse. They're agents known only by numbers as in the prison and the three letters that indicate from what province they are from. If they're from foreign countries like Mexico and Costa Rica or Jamaica, they don't have that three letters at the end of their numbers. Among all the customer service or among the customer service of other companies or organizations, the CRA customer service is the most ruthless, arrogant, ignorant, radical, and very horrible. They get angry very quick with only a short question from you. Not only they have these characteristics, but you also have to wait for a long time to talk to them, especially or usually between 30 minutes to 60 minutes. They really do not know anything you ask. They are paid by your tax dollars to keep you away from the public servants and the public leaders in charge of the taxation. I met several of them. One was sitting on the beach in Jamaica while answering my call. Another one answered my calls while in the middle of shopping. She was in Mexico. And another one yelled at me when I asked for my tax refunds during the tax year. Read this book and you will understand the schemes and strategies used by the CRA corporations to audit you. They never audit the big corporations, but always the small business operators or small contractors, especially those in the construction industry, real estate, and these industries are their most target victims because they are levels of contractors and subcontractors. Interestingly, under the corporate government, the government book is contracted out to private sector accountants, who then contract the task to other contractors. All government books done by private accountants are contracted out as well. So there are three layers of contractors in this scheme, but it is like a gossip. Once the book is returned to the government, the story has totally changed. Yet the CRA never audits these contractors or subcontractors, but only those in the construction business and real estate, including rental. How cheap and shameless is this? Why they are targeting these industries? Because these industries are booming. Your tax dollars are being used to promote bonanza development in the capital and cities or areas near the capital. There are many contractors and subcontractors in the construction industry. The CRA will get more and more victims in this industry and more money, of course. Sadly, the police units and lawyers are never capable of helping the victims of the CRA audit. Therefore, the CRA Corporation, under the name of the CRA, becomes bolder and bolder and wants to victimize every single Canadian, not only in the construction industry, but all, and hence they want to do everyone income tax refunds, automatic filing, more wealth for them, and more money laundering, and more poverty to you. In other countries, corrupt politicians or corrupt business leaders are taken to court for accountability. They have to be accountable for their actions. But in Canada, no one takes corrupt politicians to court. No one takes corrupt business leaders to court either, because these business leaders are the backers of the politicians at your expense. The police and lawyers are afraid of taking action against corrupt politicians. Why do the police fear of politicians? Because the police units have been turned into simply a customer service, and that is why they are called the police service or community police rather than law enforcement. In addition, these units are being under political control because they have association, union, and board, and politicians are the leaders. They are under political control. Even the police commanders are not able to put corrupt politicians in jail because they are under political control. For example, the former RCMP Commissioner Paulson, upon knowing that Harper was a traitor, he seeks support from the public to charge Harper of treason. But there was no result of this case. Stephen Harper appointed 480 judges from the lower court to the highest court during his tenure as Prime Minister. Go figure. Harper did betray you. Before the Council of Foreign Relations, he offered Canada to this council for free. He signed an agreement with Barack Obama in 2011 to form a new corporate control or fascist America called the North American Union. It is a pact based on John Manley's book, North American Community, an intention to join Canada and the United States. Do you remember Donald Trump declared that he wants Canada to become the 51st state? Because that was the anticipated result of the agreement between Harper and Obama in 2011. It is also the result of Harper's presentations before the Council of Foreign Relations that he gave Canada to be under the Council for free. The path has been prepared, and now Donald Trump wants to walk on it. He tried by quickly declaring Canada to be the 51st state, and Western Canada is keen to join the United States. Since you have allowed the government to be turned into a corporation, the leaders can sell the country or give up their sovereignty to another country. Don't you see the WHO and the United Nations are now radically using the WEF and the WHO Pandemic Treaty to force you to surrender your sovereignty to them for free, or get you to take the COVID-19 vaccine so that they can control you. You are no longer humans once you take this vaccine, 2 minimum, but as Noah Harari or Klaus Schwab's advisor said, you are a hackable animals. When your country goes bankrupt, when your corporate Canada goes bankrupt, the IMF will issue a bailout package that resulted in your country to be bought by other countries or by several other countries until you paid up your debt. Since the government reform, people have been using the political power to steal from you, to rob you, to fraud you, and all in the name of government, or the real culprit is the Canada Revenue Agency and even people from Service Canada who call themselves Employment and Social Development Canada. These are your nation's logistics, and they use your name and identity to steal and fraud you. Yeah, they fraud you and your tax dollars, and then send their money to their offshore accounts using your identity. Since Service Canada contractors are people or the corrupt former government officials and are the people behind the creation of the phantom entity, Employment and Social Development Canada, and they process and issue your pensions, employment insurance, and so forth, they put at the back of the check sent to you ESDC. It is a product placement. They want you to know or believe that they are department of ESDC, a phantom department, a department that does not exist. This corporate government has actually a dysfunctional administrative system. Therefore, it is easy for any person to infiltrate the system and claim he is a government. For example, Total Credit Recovery, which is a collection agency, it was banned in 2014 in the United States for making illegal collection of student loan. They do the same in Canada, but the lawyers or police, no lawyers or police has the ability to charge these people. This company has been chasing after the innocent students for the repayment of student loan taken by the corrupt bank officials and the corrupt government officials, and they claim they are Government of Canada, Ontario Ministry of Finance, Ontario Ministry of Training Colleges and Universities, and Ontario Ministry of Colleges and University, the Canada Revenue Agency, Government of Ontario, and Employment and Social Development Canada, which is a phantom entity. It does not exist. The most interesting thing is that all these names are printed in their one letter. This is an illegal letter, but the recipients believe this kind of letter because they associate their letter or the letter from the customer service to that of the government. Have Canadians become just as dummy as the politicians? They cannot tell the difference between legal and legal. This is very sad. Back to the internal memo from the agent or customer service agent to the bank manager. After they did their audit and decided that you owe tax in the amount of what you have in your bank account plus the 13% HST times 6 or 8 different people, if you refuse to pay the amount of money just as much as the cash you have in your bank account and in a lump sum payment, and the people who receive the fraudulent requirement to pay, the 6 or 8 other people, they want these people to pay on your behalf. By the way, who wants to pay for someone else's debt, or who wants to pay for a fraud? And this makes you owe, if they do pay, makes you owe 6 or 8 times the amount they charge you. So they will say you are non-compliant. Once they determine that they want the total cash you have in your bank account in a lump sum payment, they refuse to answer any communication from you. They all disappeared in the thin air. The telephone numbers that they use also disappeared in the thin air. They are no longer in operation. Mind you, the CRA Corporation is a customer service. So as a customer service, they are everything, including the court, a phantom court, a court that does not exist. And the customer service agents is the court clerk, the minister, the judge, all in one. But they never use their real name, always a fake name. As you deny to pay the amount requested by the corrupt auditor, which is the total amount of your total cost in the bank plus the 13% HST, they call you non-compliance. To pester you, they send several letters of reinforcement and send by different people with different addresses and different PO box addresses. They send different communication and all demanding the same amount plus interest and remittance voucher. This remittance voucher has different account number and all offshore accounts. After my husband was audited in 2016, and knowing that this is not an audit but simply a series of bank deposit transactions, which was later declared as your husband does not pay taxes, I laughed. Therefore, they want to talk to our accountant. I said to them, prove to me that my husband did not pay taxes. Until today, 2025, the end of 2025, they never give me any proof. All people involved disappeared. Most of the employees of the CRA Corporation are foreigners, and they come and go like chips. It is to hide the crime, and the people must leave the crime scene. Interestingly, soon after this fraudulent audit, the CRA never sent my husband any quarterly HST form anymore. All victims, once they finish their audit, all victims never received their quarterly form soon after they were audited. The customer service agents started sending their so-called notice of assessment and determine how much you have to pay for that quarter. It is always payable, never receivable. Yes, they determine how much tax or HST you have to pay, and all numbers are based on prediction or estimation. They predict that your sales will be so much during the quarter, and so are your HST paid and collected. This so-called notice of assessment also includes the amount you owe from the result of their audit. It is sent from different PO box addresses, and each one has a remittance voucher attached to this supposed to be notice of assessment. This remittance voucher tells who the person to receive the money, and you have to pay the money to the bank using this voucher or send a check using this voucher, where the money should be this voucher. At the bottom of this voucher, it explains that your HST number is an holding account. So the money will be deposited to this holding account and then transferred to the offshore account stated in the voucher. It turns out that there are, like in my husband's case, there are 34 offshore accounts attached to his HST bank account, an online bank account that neither my husband nor I had access to it. It could only be seen online if you do online accounts. So when they send this and then the bank manager quickly remove your cash, if the bank manager did not block you from accessing your account, you can see that the money is sitting on your HST bank account. The money is sitting there. The bank manager was still waiting to see where the money should be transferred to. This HST online account was created, like in my husband's case, 2009, 2 years after the creation of the CRA Corporation. And his SIN also, social insurance number, also is an account, which he or I could not have access to them. When I saw these two online accounts, I asked the bank staff who created the accounts. She said that she doesn't know. But you can see it. You can use it to pay taxes. That is weird. Usually it is you who create the accounts, but these two accounts were created without my husband's knowledge. When I do online banking, once in a while I saw money in these two accounts, then disappeared. I do not know where the money came from or where the money went. My suspicion of money laundering with this account was as a holding account started in 2012. So they kept asking me to pay taxes online. Therefore, I did it. To my surprise, the real CRA never received the payment at all. It took almost 1 year to have this issue solved with the real CRA. The money was deposited to someone else's account. So they put it in this, well, I paid to this account, but then the money was transferred to another person account, online account. Since the CRA Corporation becomes the customer service of the CRA, all your communication will be forwarded to them. This makes solving problem is tremendously difficult. The CRA Corporation agent's job is not to solve problem, but to create problem, robbing you and lie and deny or ignore you altogether. I have communicated with the ministers responsible for the student loans and national revenue and even the CRA about this issue, as these corrupt officials have used a collection agency, Total Credit Recovery, to negotiate with the CRA contractors who processes the check for income tax refunds and provincial and federal benefits. All my communications to these ministers, including the CRA, either end up at the hand of the customer service or just disregarded. What kind of government is this? They steal or rob you, then ignore all your communication because they have been found out. But the theft continues. It is like an automatic. So they have put it in the system, so automatically it is printed and the money is given to all these corrupt people. After the establishment of the CRA Corporation and Service Canada, your GST number or HST number and social insurance number were turned into bank accounts, online bank accounts that you cannot have access. The sad thing is that all these online accounts are attached to offshore accounts. In fact, when the CRA Corporation was established, millions of federal benefit, which is the quarterly GST or HST, intended for the elderly, including widows and widowers, pensioners, the poor, for those under social assistance or those with poor income, disappeared. They were used. The GST was used as the operational capital for the CRA Corporation. Millions of dollars was used for the operational capital of the CRA Corporation. So this supposed to be a deep state steal your benefits and survive as a deep state. My husband was an HST registrant, and after it became an online account created in 2009, it was attached to, as I already, to 34 offshore accounts. He was audited illegally and had our bank account cleaned up without our knowledge. All were done by the bank manager who had partnered with the CRA Corporation to steal our money. Of course, the bank managers received a portion of the money from our bank accounts. His social insurance number, my social insurance number, our son's social insurance number were also created in as an online bank accounts, and we do not have access to this account, but they also attach to offshore accounts. Each has two accounts, two offshore accounts. Who uses these accounts? Those from the CRA Corporation and Service Canada. They do money laundering using your GST, HST, or social insurance number online accounts. This is the reason politicians cannot punish those who do money laundering, because they use your identity. And now they want to do digital money because they say to prevent money laundering. But who is doing the money laundering here? It's them, the inside people. See what happened when you accuse people? You accuse people because you're covering things that you are doing. Turning your GST or HST account number or into bank account should be illegalized. Yes, it is illegal, but politicians know nothing about the laws except the laws they propose. Well, they are proposed by external or outsiders. Even this digital money, this digital ID or digital money is proposed by outsiders, people who want to use the government to pursue their interests. They use the politicians to further their interests because they want to control you too. And you believe them. You believe these people and agree with them to turn the government into a corporation. So you are now reaping the result of your choice. The government cannot operate as a corporation. No GST or HST number or even social insurance number should be used to be a bank account number. It makes it easy for the customer service or any person who has access to these numbers turn them into bank accounts for money laundering. And as what happened when Justin Trudeau rebranded the Department of Human Resources and Social Development Canada in 2015 to become the Department of Families, Children and Social Development Canada, all the corrupt officials left or were kicked out from the department and they become contractors at Service Canada. So these corrupt former government officials then created the phantom entity and called Employment and Social Development Canada. So now this phantom entity wants to take over Service Canada. They want to put it into one. It is a movement of creating a deep state at your expense. It is sad because those who are involved in the creation of the deep states are those who are hungry for power and money. Now they are using the politicians to create digital ID and want to have digital money because they want your money. And they are outsiders. The outsiders are telling the politicians, I want this, I want this. I want to do this to you. They want to give you difficulty. They want your life to be difficult. And you want the government to become a corporation? These were people like who are hungry for money and power, used to work in the government as well through the political parties and never went through the developmental process, and even without security clearance, their honesty and loyalty have never been tested. It explains why they love the money more than their fellow citizens or the state or nation as a whole. Now they want to control everybody through this digital ID or digital money. It is interesting. These people make a living from you but turn around robbing you using the name CRA. They follow the leaders who use the political stage and position of authority and sell your country's resources and public policies to foreign countries. But they are also being attacked and they don't understand, like temporary foreign workers is an attack. ILO, it is an attack. Or and like migration, the migrants, illegal migrants, it is also an attack, but they don't know how to defend themselves. The CRA is one of the government agencies that operates using the most contractors among the departments and agencies since the government reforms. In reality, turning the government into a corporation because many politicians come from the business sectors and believe that the government should operate in a business-like manner is a delusion. The government and business are different in every aspect. They cannot be generalized, cannot be equalized, or even be compared. It is impossible to turn an orange into an apple, isn't it? You are ignorant that all public offices are of the people, by the people, and for the people. The government has to hire people to serve the people. Every person who works in the public office must serve the people. This is the duty of every citizen who works in the public office. No customer service. When they turned the government into a corporation, you agreed because you are illiterate. You are ignorant about the government. These corrupt people then enter the government and use their position and authority to rob you. They live luxuriously at your expense. Now they want to expand their fraudulent audit and practice because you never take action against the CRA with its fraudulent audit practice. Because of your ignorance and selfishness, they want to victimize every single one of you, not only by doing the fraudulent audit, but also the income tax returns. It is part of control, robbery, fraud, and all at your expense and ignorance. The requirements to pay is issued by the same customer service agent who also claims he is the court and the judge all in one. Get real. They want people, they want you use your service to pay for this so-called debt. It is actually the amount of cash you have in your bank account. Just analyze it and calculate it plus the HST amount. Now, who in the world wants to pay this much money to the CRA for someone they just happens to have business relation, or for a person they hire as a subcontractors to do their contracting work? If you notice the two acts, the Excise Tax Act and the Underused Housing Tax Act, they want to have an amendment means that they are targeting those in the construction industry because of the bonanza development. Why do they send this fraudulent requirement to pay to people who hire you or subcontract the job to you to give them the money? Because the corrupt bank officials and the corrupt government officials who took student loan fraudulently and employment insurance or the SERB fraudulently have been forcing you to pay for their crime. Yes, they force the innocent student to pay for their debt. Some of the debts are taken internally. So they took internal loan using the student loan program, but charged the repayment on the students, on the innocent students, and have the customer service agents or the collection agency agents to terrorize and harass the students for the repayment. And I'm one of these fraudulent student loan victims as well. And the CRA and the department in charge of the student loan at the federal and provincial governments have ignored all the communications I have sent them for over a decade. All my communications with all the proof of fraud were ignored. They know it is a fraud and just ignore it. Therefore, since tax year 2012 until today, the end of 2025, they steal my tax refunds and all family benefits, both federal and provincial. My husband also never received his tax refund since 2016 after the audit. They all just disappeared. Everything, all the people and all, they all disappeared. So do not believe it. Once you become their victims, you become a perpetual victims. You become their source of illegal incomes, thanks to the name CRA. The bank managers become the police and their enforcer. The bank managers quickly remove your money and transfer it to the stated account on the internal memo. The CRA agents never use their real names, as I mentioned several times. I mean, the CRA Corporation agents never use real names. Take a look at this internal memo. It is from a customer service agent who calls himself Ari Farah, but his real name is Michael Scolford. The interesting thing is the bank managers. All bank managers who receive this memo quickly clean up your bank accounts and transfer your money to the stated account without your knowledge. And these managers call this memo CRA garnishment. Wow. If a lawyer or a police officer believes that this memo is the CRA garnishment, it explains how stupid have they become. This is how the CRA has successfully defrauded and robbed the small business operators for decades, since its establishment in 2007, and now they want to expand their target level to cover the middle level. Notice the bank accounts in this memo. It is an HST number and has been turned into an online account without the owners knows about it. The owners never knew. This account was created in 2009 without the persons know, and of course it is in this requirement is attached to offshore accounts, 34 offshore accounts. This online account not only attached to offshore accounts, but also some will go to the social insurance number. There is another account in here that's very interesting, which is GW number 46155. Who pay the tax you owe to your own HST account and this account? Does it make sense to you? Don't you know? This is the account. So this is the account that they use to pay the ISIS. So now, as the war is continue, CIBC is the main payer of ISIS, and the CRA Corporation is the platinum contributors to ISIS. So as the war is continue, they want more money. So this is how this is the reason why they want to audit more victims. They want to get more money so they can fund more war. And this is one of the reasons too why the police or the political leaders cannot take these corrupt officials to court for money laundering, because they use your identity, which is your GST, HST account, and your social insurance number as the holding account. And this account, the second account, GW number 46155, is also give benefit to the CRA. They get a portion of it. So, well, maybe the person takes $50,000, but the money, there is a pipeline where this money will go, offshore accounts to this. So the managers, bank managers, is the key to money laundering activities. Don't be deceived.